Hey Tony, it's Friday, and first off, to answer your question of the week, I take a lot of inspiration from Teen Titans. I think it's probably the one I took the most for my personal mask game. But there have been others where we've taken a lot of influence from like Watchmen or from like My Hero Academia or whatever. So it's really just depends on what you're looking at. But as far as influences go, I kind of want to talk a little bit about influences today on how some fictional universes that we enjoy kind of turn into the games that we make. Now, obviously, I'm running a Witcher game right now, so it's not exactly an apples to apples comparison, but in a lot of the games that I run, I take a lot of inspiration from things I've read, things I've watched, things I've played, etc., etc. I think the one that strikes me the most, that I remember the most, is that initial my 5e game that I ran briefly a few years back. I think it was like a Veils of the Deep or whatever I called it. That took a lot of inspiration from a lot of different fictional universes that I really enjoy. I mean, the very ceremony that you guys had in order to become the Primordians was based heavily on Dragon Age Origins and what the Grey Wardens have to go through as they like change their body to fight Darkspawn. And of course, there was a lot of inspiration from The Witcher as well, with Witcher themed monsters and also just like combat in a dark fantasy where you are there being a monster hunter and that is your role. But it even goes a little bit deeper than that because there are other fictional universes that I greatly enjoy that I've kind of turned and taken and twisted them a little bit into what I like. So another one that this is more for a character. There's a character in a series that Taylor and I really enjoy called the Raven Shadow series, and his name is Valen Osorna. Now it's a great series. I think you'd really like Raven Shadow, Tony. So I definitely recommend it. But his very like a lot of what he had became inspiration for Damien Duskart, my old Amped Guard character, because Valen has a special power called the Blood Song, which is basically like slightly prophetic, slightly like almost like an advice that you feel deep inside you, but it's even deeper than that. And I kind of twisted that into a character I had and gave him a danger sense, almost like a spider sense in a way. But I twisted it, and I twisted a lot what I took from Raven Shadow into that character. And you can see it with with several of the characters I've played. Like years ago, this was back when I was still in Ohio, so that dates it. I played a ranger who took the oath of nonviolence and became the Green Arrow. So like he had boxing glove arrows, he had trap arrows, and all sorts of different things. Because the party was definitely an evil party. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna I'm gonna go against the grain. I'm gonna play like the best good character I possibly can, one who refuses to take the life of another. And that was really fun. Led to some interesting roleplay roleplay opportunities with the chaotic evil psychic warrior with my lawful good rangers. That was a real interesting combination there. And even as I go further in like games I enjoy and like even stories that I've written, it wears its influences pretty openly. Like again, I'll go back to the Veils of the Deep because like that combined Witcher, Dragon Age, even some Game of Thrones with some of the political ongoings that took place within that world, and just with a healthy dose of history as well because one of the main factions was heavily based on the Roman Empire, and some of the others were kind of based around the era of the fall, just because it made for a better story, in my opinion. And now with The Witcher, now obviously it's taken place in its own fictional universe. Oh, it's pre-made universe, but I'm doing a lot of things with it that normally wouldn't be in a Witcher game necessarily. But something that I'm interested to see what'll happen. And I think you guys are going to enjoy some of the stories I take and some of the influences I take from things like Game of Thrones, like Raven Shadow, like Dragon Age, etc., because everything kind of builds on itself, and everything has its influences. And I honestly do enjoy, in a very strange way, I really like derivative fiction, in which I'm making this thing that's entirely a trope, but I'm embracing its tropeness and making a story that formulates to the trope. I think that's kind of interesting to do because sometimes you get a lot of flack for going through with a trope, but I think when it's done well, it's done really well and can be really enjoyable. So we'll see what ends up happening. Tony, my question for you is: what are some of your favorite tropes that you've seen in video games and shows and books and stuff? Just curious, Tony. I'll see you on Tuesday. Later, bro.